Okay, so I'm live here, live on Creator, I'm live on YouTube as well. Quite excited for this talk. Sorry for the delay, guys. We had some trouble going live on YouTube itself. So we're doing a small Python quiz for those of you who are joining me on Creator. We will be waiting for what I'll do is I will get started. Nishant is having some trouble with his internet. So what I can do is I can get started. I will share a few things of what we're doing with this talk, give a quick introduction as well, and hopefully Nishant will be able to join in to talk to us as well. Okay, so I work with the Creator team. I work on the dev team of Creator, and I've largely worked my entire life with startups. I'm not a Python Django expert, but what I have been doing over the last 2 years is working closely with Nishant, who's a principal backend engineer, and have learned a thing or two about Python. I thought I'll pick his brain and do a quick call here where we're kind of talking things about Python itself. But we'll wait till Nishant gets here. Meanwhile, I can get started as well, talking a little bit about my journey, how that has been, and how it's been for us building products as well. So before we get started, I thought I'll do a quick chat a little bit about full stack development, backend development, what that really means, what does that actually entail before diving into Python Django itself. I know there are going to be sessions on Node.js as well on DevScript. So I think what we'll try to do is try to set the perspective on what full stack development is, what exactly you need to know to become a full stack developer itself. And then dive a little bit into backend and then dive specifically into Python and the Django framework, right? So I think, like Nishant was mentioning a few minutes earlier before he dropped off, full stack technology generally refers to like being able to build a system end to end. That is not only what happens behind the scenes on the server side, but also what happens that you see on the screen on the front end. One thing, people are very intimidated by this idea of a full stack dev. People often feel that like I need to know everything. I need to be able to do everything exceptionally well to be a full stack dev. But one thing we've noticed, especially with our team at Creator itself, is that more than anything, it's just the willingness to be able to work across the stack, and obviously some basic principles and guiding principles on how things might look like. For example, we have a few developers who bring expertise on one end of the spectrum, but are willing to work on other parts as well. So when you're talking about being a full stack developer, it's not that you can't be an expert in one thing or you need to know everything equally well. It's more that, look, I know how to I know how to do backend really well, and I understand fundamentally how, to a degree, how things show up on the screen and front end. So, and then I have a willingness to work on the front end as well. So in that sense, you can consider yourself a full stack developer as well. And I think this is one thing that I did want to touch on, because I think oftentimes people don't consider themselves full stack just because they're much better at one than another. But okay, so diving back into the center, right? Diving back specifically into backend, since that's what we're here to talk about. What really goes into backend? Like, what are the things that are considered backend, right? So you talk about backend, you're referring to the servers, the databases, and all the internal architecture that drives the application. Usually, the end user typically never interacts with this realm of the application. So whatever you see on the screen is largely what I would say is front end, just as a just a simple way to describe it is whatever you would see on the screen, whatever you would experience directly as a user, I would consider as front end. And whatever happens behind the scenes, what happens that you don't see, all the database stuff where the data is stored and how the servers give those data to you, and the architecture of those things, I would consider as backend. There's of course this whole realm of DevOps as well, which just involves putting the application itself onto the internet so that people can actually consume that content. But today we'll touch largely on backend itself. So in terms of backend, I think based on what we wanted to talk about today, we are looking at two specific technologies in this conference. We're looking at Python Django and Node.js. Those are the two backend frameworks that we're going to be looking at. And obviously, both of these will use some database of some kind, whether that be MongoDB, whether that be Postgres or MySQL. But today we'll touch a little bit on the backend itself. What exactly is what exactly how exactly Python Django and Node.js compare. That's the part that we're going to be touching on. So okay, so why do we use Python Django? What does Python Django actually achieve for us? What does it exactly do, right? The Python Django layer is actually the layer that communicates how to communicates what data necessary that you need to show the user. Okay, so basically, when you look at backend entirely, you have a server which is I don't know how much you all know, so it's a bit difficult for me. So I might be dumbing it down a little too much. Please let me know in the chat, or please let me know if I'm going way over your head in the chat as well, because I'm not sure exactly how much you all know. I'm gonna try to take a very explain like I'm fire approach for this chat for this talk itself. So there may be some things that are not 100% exactly accurate, but I'm trying to explain it to a layman itself, so anyone who's watching can understand. But in any case, if you feel like, look, you want to dive deeper, that's also totally fine. I'd be happy to do that. Or if you feel like I'm going over your head, please let me know in the chats, right? Hopefully that's clear. Okay. Okay, great. So yeah, so what I was trying to say is, so the three parts to the backend itself. One is the server. The server is the computer where that serves the data. That's why it's called a server. So let's say from my computer, I'm asking google.com for like the search results. This is google.com's computer telling me these are the search results for you to show. So that's the server part of it. The second is the application layer. This is the business logic for your application. Basically, you call them APIs. This is how your client, that is your computer, interacts with the server itself. Third is where is the database. The data is stored, and where all your information is stored itself. So Python Django fits in mostly at the application layer. That's where Python Django's functionality comes in. It helps you write the business logic for your application so that you can whenever a user asks for some information, your server is able to give that information back. You'll have to give me a moment. I'm trying to get Nishant online. He's having some trouble with his internet, so he's giving me a call. Hi, Nishant. Yeah. Okay. You want to join the call? Yeah, that's fine. You'll have to join. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So Nishant will be joining us in a bit. I will maybe wait for a moment if that's okay. I think it'll be good to get his thoughts as well, especially as we start deep diving into Django. It'll be good to get Nishant's thoughts as well. So I'll just wait for a couple of moments and then we'll continue. Okay. Thank you, Anubhav. Thank you, Pranav. Okay. Do you want me to dive deep, Jyotishwar? What I can do is, I think when we talk a little bit more about Django, we will be diving a little bit deeper. So I think definitely something we will like, especially when we talk about the comparison between Django. I kind of just wanted to set the context for those of you who are like maybe still a little bit new to back itself. So we'll wait 1 or 2 minutes and then we'll get Nishant here as well.
Hello.
Hi, Nishant.
Yeah, to be back. I'm sorry for that happened.
Nishant, I think you'll have to get on YouTube as well.
Huh?
Nishant, you'll have to go on YouTube as well. I sent you a link on Slack. Please join that.
Yeah. Just a sec. Yeah.
Worst day ever, huh? Morning internet breakage.
Yeah, dude, and my phone also stopped working. I couldn't get
That's okay.
WhatsApp.
That's okay. Go ahead and join here as well.
Okay.
And you may want to get headphones on, Nishant.
Headphones.
Yeah, Nishant headphones. Nishant headphones. Sorry, guys, one moment. Nishant's getting on YouTube as we have him on both places. Okay, great. Yeah,
Both places.
yeah, can hear you.
Great. Yeah, both places.
Nishant, you'll have to get headphones if you have headphones, or mute yourself.
Yeah, I muted myself.
Okay, perfect.
Is that fine? I don't have the. Yeah. Hello. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, when you're not talking, yeah, we can hear you, Nishant. When you're not talking, make sure you just drop a mute button. Okay. So Nishant, we were just diving a little bit deeper into backend itself. I think we were briefly talking about it. So we talked a little bit on full stack technology and then backend itself. So I think it's kind of set the context on where Django itself is used and how it's used in the application layer. But Nishant, what would be good is if you can talk a little bit about Python Django itself. What exactly that means? What is the framework and how does that help in software development? Since we've kind of the context of how Django is there, it'd be good to kind of dive a little bit deeper on what Django itself does. So I'll mute myself. You can go ahead and. Oh, I'm also muted. Sorry. Yeah, we hear you. YouTube chat, we hear you. I was muted. My apologies. I was just muted while Nishant was talking. You should be able to hear me now, and Nishant will also be audible in a moment. He was muted. Mistakes. Nishant, you'll have to start again on Python Django.
Sure.
Is Nishant audible? Can you guys hear Nishant as well? Nishant, maybe say something. Check test.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Nishant, you're echoing. I don't know. One moment, guys. Sorry for this. Nishant is audible with echo. Yes. Give me a moment. Okay, let me do one thing. Nishant, just drop off. I will continue. I think you have some echo issues. See if you can get headphones. I will continue. I'll talk a little bit about Django. Just don't worry about it. Yeah. Just drop off for a moment and I will continue. I'll continue. I think it was working fine. People were able to hear me. So I'll just go ahead and continue, and then maybe you can join back if you can get your echo sorted. I don't want to keep people waiting. I'll just go ahead and continue. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and continue as well. What I can do actually, I think what will be fun is I can spin up a Django server itself. I'll do that right. I'll share my screen and spin up a Django server. Hopefully that should work. And then what we'll do is Nishant can join in as well, and he can kind of touch a little bit on how he's used Django. And what I wanted to communicate on this session is actually how easy Django is to use and why it's like so straightforward to code itself on Python Django. So I have to share screen on both places. Okay, so yeah, so what I will do is I will share screen. I was thinking I'll set up a virtual environment. Nishant has dropped some commands for me. So I will create a Python server. I'll spin up how easy it is to create a Python Django server. We'll create a local admin itself on the call. And what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit about the advantages of Python Django itself. You will be able to see my notes that I've put together for this call as well. But so let's just start coding itself. I think that'll be fun, and hopefully you guys can see how easy it is to spin up a Django server. Obviously, there'll be tools for this that you can find online. These are things that are pretty easily available. But what I wanted to really communicate with Python Django is how easy it is to use and how it takes care of a lot of things for you, right? Right off the grid, Python Django also gives you a lot of security itself. It's not, it's quite straightforward for someone starting up. You don't have to worry about too many things. There are places where it fails, and we'll talk about that. But basically, want to show you how simple it is to set up a Django server. So firstly, I'm going to create a virtual environment. Copy this. I copied it so that it'll be a little easier for us to work with, and I don't have to keep typing. Let's call this dev script. I obviously have Python already installed on my Mac, but okay, I will have to access the virtual environment. The virtual environment is basically used so that the code is common across for everyone, not just for me. So when another dev comes in as well, he uses the same virtual environment and he's coding on the same computer. So you don't have any problems with my computer specific configuration while you're coding. So you always try to use a virtual environment while coding, just so that the problems that exist on your computer, specific configurations that you have on your computer, don't necessarily interfere with with the coding process itself, and everyone's experiencing the same thing. So that way, when you have any bugs as well, everyone's able to see the same bugs, or the computer that you're pushing to as well is experiencing the same bugs. Okay, so we created a virtual environment. I will install Django. This is pretty easy to do. Again, as you can see, I have Python already installed. This will take a minute or so. Okay, great. I have got Django installed. It gave me some warning. I think I'm using an old version of Django, but that should be fine. And all I have to do is I create a project and run server, and I should more or less be ready to go in terms of having an application up itself. Let's call this dev script, project. Okay, so now I have this dev script project in. You can see I need to go into dev script project. And what I need to do is I need to run migrations. Migrations are basically, this is something, again, particularly you see in Python itself. This is just to create your database, the database models. So I will run that, and then I can show you how easy it is to spin up a server itself. Sweet. So as you can see, it does a few things. It creates a user model, which is something that you'll use in all the apps. It creates an email for the user model and creates a few basic things that are needed just for running your app itself. And then now all I have to do is I need to run server. I'll run it on different manage.py. Just choose a different port. 80. Okay, sweet. So you should be able to see me, and localhost 8080. And there you go. This got a Django server up and running, and it's that easy, right? And if I go to admin, I have a Django admin that I can use to manage my application. Another thing Django is really good for is it kind of allows you to manage your application easily. You get an admin console right out of the box, so you don't have to build this CMS kind of setup for your administrators to use. So what we'll also do quickly is I'll also quickly create an admin itself. I'll create a super user, and what I can do is we'll create a super user and then put in some content. You'll see I'll be able to log in as the admin as well. Obviously, this is obviously not still very early, but let me create a super user as well and show you. I can log in. Username, I'll use Vignesh. Email address, vignesh@creator.club. Password, I'll just ASDF. Password again. Oh my god, I didn't type this right. ASDF. Password is too short. Okay. Sure, why not? Great. So I have a super user already created, and this is oops. Let's check that worked. Oh no, wait, sorry, my bad. I should what I need to do is I need to run the server again. My apologies. Forgot to do that. Okay, I'm running now. Okay, so localhost admin. So this will be Vignesh, and the password is ASDF. Perfect. So you can see like this gives me something right off the box. I can create users, I can create groups, and this is something that's like Python gives me right out of the box. I don't have to do anything for this. This is something that like it's super easy to set up. I will stop sharing my screen now. But fundamentally, why I wanted to show you guys this is so that you guys can get an idea of. Whoops, no. Yeah, why I wanted to show you guys this is so that you guys will get an idea in terms of how exactly easy it is to set up on Python itself. I see someone put a comment on zooming in. I hope that was kind of. Oh no, I'm just seeing the comments. Wait, let me share my screen again, and I can. What I'll do is, at the end of this, I will drop the code itself on the chat. Maybe I'll just put in the chat what were the commands we used. But basically, it's very simple. We set up a virtual environment at the start, so everyone has the same users. And then what we did was we installed Django. We put start project on Django, and then we run the server. That's about it, right? It's that easy to actually get started with Python itself. That's how straightforward it is to get started with Python Django. For someone who's especially newish to coding and who doesn't have that many dev resources, one thing that Python Django is very, very good for is that it really helps you get started very easily. And you don't have to do anything too much in terms of setting up like a security system. Second thing you don't have to set up too much is you don't have to set up the user models and things like that, which generally get kind of complicated. and so those things you don't have to do it at all, and it automatically comes right at the box. The maybe the downside of Python Django, if at all I could say, given that I have worked a little bit in JavaScript, is that it can be a little slower sometimes. But when you're early on at your in your journey and you want to just set up a backend very quickly, having Python Django is very easy, especially if you're building for somebody else to manage. You want to give them an admin console. Django is super fast in terms of giving you that. Right. So uh, one so one thing I will talk about a little bit is I want to talk a little bit about um, why why Django itself. What are the advantages of Django and how it kind of compares to Node? I think that's something that I wanted to talk about. I know it touched a little bit about security itself, but there are a few advantages that Python Django does bring to the table. Python Django was released in 2005, so it's a bit older, and Node was released in 2009. Those Node is a little bit newer as well. Um, so Node. So in terms of community, let's start with like how easy it is to build. I think one thing I did mention was at the start around setting up itself, but even going forward, given that Python Django is a little bit more mature, there is some advantage to using it because they have a fairly active community, and it's a little bit more mature in terms of having been around for longer. So in that sense, there's probably a little bit more resources out there to get started with Python Django. The big downside of Python Django when compared to Node is that it doesn't offer full stack development, right? When you look at Python, the language is largely designed for backend. It's largely designed for one portion of the app. But the big advantage with Node and why a lot of people are preferring Node today, especially the newer companies, is that you can use JavaScript across the board. So when you use Node.js, I can use React, I can use JavaScript right across the board. I don't have to depend on, I don't have to change the languages from one space to another, right? So that's one thing I will say is a big difference. From an architecture standpoint, Python Django uses the model view controller model. That's what Python Django's architecture is. And for Node.js, it's a little bit more event driven. I We can dive deep like a whole different conversation. So I don't want to get into it that much. In terms of flexibility as well, Python Django, I think one issue it does come in is that it's a little less flexible. Okay, there's some questions I will address those questions maybe towards the end. I'll just quickly run through a few more of the advantages itself and then come to the questions right after, right? So in terms of flexibility as well, Python Django does it is slightly difficult in terms of it is slightly less flexible in the sense that if I was trying to do something asynchronous, that I will need to bring in some extra frameworks on top of Python to really make it work. But but like in terms of Node, it might be a little bit easier given that the entire ecosystem is on JavaScript itself. Can you explain about how we do authentication system with a front end like React? So I think that's a pretty involved question. I think that would be a little challenging for me to dive into right now. But fundamentally, my suggestion would be like if you're trying to just get started, would probably not. Again, I'm largely speaking from a startup kind of environment and what I would do from a startup side of things. I don't know if you're a big company really trying to build an authentication system. Maybe I'm not the best person to talk to, but if you're just trying to set up something, I would say just use a library that exists, that is a pre-existing. Like I would say authentication is one of those things that are really hard to build, but there are tons of libraries out there that allow you to do this pretty easily. Obviously, you want to find something that works with your stack, but there are a lot of solutions out there that do handle this for you. And I would say even in terms of authentication today, the systems are largely working towards a phone OTP setup. So you could use something like Twilio, where you can basically send an SMS with the OTP to the user and the user logs in. My suggestion would be like, don't build everything out yourself. Use pre-existing logins and also work with like libraries that are already existing. Okay. I'm seeing another question. Please cover how to manage files and how to create best modular level code with standard practices. Yeah. So Anubhav, I'd love to answer that, but I feel like that would be a little tricky for me to answer. Like without knowing the details of your project. But I'll tell you one thing that you can do with Python Django is you can create different apps that serve different things, right? I think I was going to do that in the call itself, but I think I thought since we're running short of time, didn't really touch into creating an app. So one thing you can do is you can create a application that allows your code to be separated. So for example, if I was trying to build a gaming, let's say a gaming platform, right? What I would do is I would have an app that focuses on the user side of things. I would have an app that focuses on the game mechanics. I would have an app that focuses on the payments, and then an app that focuses on the rewards. So basically on Python Django, one thing you can do is you can do create app, and that allows you to create specific applications for each. And the app will have its own admin, and you can even set access to different parts. And finally, you can even one thing you can also do is you can even run those different apps on different servers as different instances as well, so it's deployed. So using apps yeah, Chintan, that's also fair. You do want to create an authentication system. Your authentication system will be connected to your backend. I assume the question was around Node, so I assume that. But thank you, Chintan. That's a good clarification. But coming back to the question that Anubhav was asking, yeah, Python Django does allow you to create modular level code. You can for different things. How you divide those out, I think, is a little bit more of a personal choice. Some people like to have a few things under one app, some people like to have a lot of things under one app. But again, this is a little bit more of a personal choice, but definitely the capabilities are there. You can create specific apps to do Python Django itself. Node has a single thread event loop concept. What about Python Django? I talked a little bit about the model view controller aspect, but what I'll do, Prasad, is let me not dive too deep into it. I want to make sure that we're able to give you a broad overview itself. Maybe towards the end, I can try to address some of these questions. Um, I try to spin up something pretty in terms of try to spin up a easily in terms of how to get started with Python Django as well. But one thing I also wanted to show you is I also wanted to show one query that I found was pretty fascinating. I myself have not worked that much with Python, but one thing that I did like was how easy it is to write queries, and this is something that's true of Python itself, right? It's a very easy and language that sounds a lot like natural language. It's one of the easiest languages to get started with. And I just wanted to show one query that we wrote that will be really that I thought was very fascinating, and how I can break down a very complicated query into a single line with Python. So I'll just share my screen, walk through this one query itself, and this kind of highlights like why it's easy to code in. I think fundamentally Python Django is quite straightforward in terms of being able to code. Okay, so this is the query that's there. I don't know if you can see. I might want to zoom in, so I'll copy it and then okay, never mind. How do I zoom into this? Can you guys see this, or is this too small? I need to go back. Is this too small? Like, can you see this query? Is this visible? I can copy it into shell. I'm not sure how to show you this. Okay. Let me make it multiple lines. So hopefully this is visible. Yeah, this is one of those typical Python Django queries that like we ourselves use a lot, and this is something that we find is like super efficient to do. I haven't seen other languages be this efficient. I know like a Node gives you a few things as well, but hopefully this query is visible. So let's look at. I'll tell you quickly walk through what this query is trying to do for a sample gaming app, and you can think of like in natural language how complicated that query is and how easy it is to do that, right? So let's say, for example, that I was trying to get the all the people from a particular group who have logged into a game more than a few times. And yeah, so this is what I'm trying to do, right? I have a game and I have people logging into the game, and I want to understand how many times have people logged into the game and filter all the users that have logged in more than once in a game. This is generally kind of complicated, a lot of things that I need to consider. So I'll quickly show you how with Python Django we can achieve this pretty easily. This is a query that we use pretty often with query sets in the Django REST framework. So first thing is I look at the games. The games are the list of objects I'm trying to get. This is the object that I want to understand. I want to understand how many games have been played meeting all these conditions. And I want to filter with respect to games. So I'm basically filtering with these games objects, all the game objects. I don't want all of them. I want to filter it in a specific time. So the first part is where I put in the fields that are true or false. So I want to make sure that the games are actually played. So this is probably a field in a database that says, okay, did they actually go and play the game, or was the game object just created? So I'll say last played at is not null, that is null equal to false. Then what I do is I want to check if the users who played this game are part of us X number of users. So I put client ID in whatever the list of users that I want to give. So these are the simple filters I can give, and this sounds very much like natural language, right? I want to check if client ID of the people playing the game is in all these IDs itself. The next thing I do is I take the values of things that I really want. Right here would be things that are like, what do I want to know about the game? I don't want to know everything about the game. I want to know, let's say, for example, I want to know I want to know the kills in the game. Let's say it's a gaming thing. I want to know how many, on an average, how many deaths were in the game, so on. So I can put in whatever information I actually want out of this. I want to put that, right? And now let's say, for example, I only want to filter again by by people where there are more than where there are more than two of these games. Let's say, for example, like I want to get in all the games where there were more, like where there were at least the player has played twice, right? I don't want to only get the people where one person has played, they've gone. I want to get people where they've played more than one time, right? So what I will do is I can annotate using Django. What I'll do is I'll annotate, tell Django that, look, I want you to group all these people by how many times they appear. So I want to know, like, again, I can put whatever I want here, but let's say I put user ID in this. I will say, look, you need to tell me how many times ID appears in this set and create and you count them and annotate it as participant count. So basically what Django will do is it will look through the list of objects, all the game objects, and say, okay, this user appears 5 times and it will say participant count equal to 5. This user appears 3 times, participant count equal to 3. So basically it's going to annotate saying this user, how many times did they appear? And I can basically use that to count pretty much anything I want. So if I want to check how many times games had more than 5 kills, I will do annotate participant count equal to, number of kills equal to count kills. So basically it will tell me how many times a particular event occurs. This is again super useful a lot of times and really simplifies writing queries. These are queries that you often have to use, whether it is to compile data about the whether it is to compile data itself or whether it is to just serve to the user as well. Maybe you want to show them a graph, maybe you want to show them a histogram, something like that. These things can be very valuable. And then what I do at the end is I can again filter this and say I only want everyone who's played more than 3 games to show up. I don't want the other users. And these are nice, right? Like tomorrow, let's say I want to target and send an email to users. I want to say everyone who's played more than 3 games, I want to send them an email. So this really is helpful for me in sending, in filtering people like this, filtering objects like this. And I think this is where Python really shines in terms of making it very easy to write these queries. It's very easy in terms of like creating these complicated queries and very simple to debug and test as well. These are like not very different from natural language that we're all used to, right? I can walk through the commands. Some people were asking me before, so I've written this down. I won't go through in the shell again and type it out. That might take a little too long, but hopefully this is visible. Let me go quickly on the chat and check. Zoom in. Oh my God, screen is not visible. Whoops. I'll zoom in a little bit more. Okay, I don't think I can zoom in any more than this. Is it? Hopefully this is visible. I don't even think I can make this any bigger. Let me hide this as well. Yeah, I can't make this any bigger, guys. I feel like I should be visible. Oh, I should have checked this. I should have checked this. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. Hopefully this was kind of visible. I kind of walked through the entire thing, but I'm not sure how I can make it even more visible. But again, I'll try to walk through the commands again. I'll highlight, so hopefully that will help. But basically, first thing we did when we set up was we created a virtual environment. We accessed our virtual environment using this. Again, you want to use the same name here. It's use gaming. We installed Django itself, and obviously you can specify what version you want, and then we start a project. That's all we did pretty much. We didn't do too much more. We had to migrate to get the user models, and then we ran the server and specified whatever port we want. So pretty much these are the steps. This, you can find this online. It's not like rocket science. None of this is too difficult. You can find this online. What we also created a super user so we can actually log in. I did mention how you can create apps. This is the command to create an app. So today, if I want to create a payments app or I want to create a gaming app, I can create that separately. There are ways that I can run these specific apps on specific instances. So also your code is very modular as well. So those things are obviously there. And those are things that are possible. So I will stop sharing. I'm so sorry, guys. I cannot make that any more bigger. Remove the comment section which is visible. Okay. I don't know. How do I? Oh, you want to remove this? Okay, that is gone. The comment section. I can't do that actually. Somebody else has to do that. Vivan, if you're here, can you remove it? Apparently, that's making my screen small because I can't zoom in anymore. Okay. Oh no. Whoa. Okay. Yeah. Sorry about this, guys. Okay, it's gone now. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Vivan. Okay. I think hopefully, yeah. I mean, I can walk through this query again. Hopefully, this is kind of visible now. But basically, what we're doing is, I think I talked through this extensively, so I'll kind of just please skim through. We're filtering all the games objects that we have. We want to filter all the games objects that we have, and here is where you can set specific conditions to the games. So here I'm saying it should be played at least. It's not just that a game object was created. The last played at, which is probably a field that I'm maintaining, is not false. Last played at actually exists. It's not null. And then I'm also checking if the client ID is in a particular group of objects. So I only want from a group of X number of users who played this. So here I can put in whatever conditions I want. I can put in like anything from like, is it greater than, lesser than, any field that I have within my model itself, I can put in over there, right? Um, the values thing will tell you what value you actually want. Let's say I want to understand how many kills were in the game, how many deaths were in the game. I can filter those out as well. So then here my database is not, I mean, my query is not giving me like 1,000 things. It's giving me like just the fields that I want. So that's what I use values for. And then the annotate is to annotate is like to help mark certain things, right? So I want to create this new value participant count, and this participant count mark it the number of people who are in number of people who are doing something, number of people who did something, or number of people who occurred. So when I use count, I'm basically saying the number of times this occurred, please mark them as participant counts. So if user, I here put in say the user ID, I say if this user ID occurred like 10 times to right. So then when it gives me the list, it'll say the kills in the game are 25, deaths in the game are 15, the participant count. So it'll say 10 times this occurred. And then what I can do is I can also apply a filter again and say only give me the user count is greater than 3. So this is again, like I mentioned, pretty useful in terms of giving querying things in a very specific condition. Okay, hopefully that was visible. I'm so sorry I had to redo that, but hopefully that was visible. I'll quickly talk a little bit. What I can do is I'll quickly talk a little bit about my journey with Django itself. I'm not a Django expert, so sorry. This was like I shared a little bit about things that I knew myself and I have been reading about. I largely work with React and more of the front end tools, but one thing I found with Django is it's super easy to use and obviously leverages a lot of the advantages that Python itself brings to the table. So my journey started a couple of years ago. I actually was largely had worked only with Node and MongoDB. And one thing that really surprised me was how easy it was to pick up and how close to natural language it is. Like today, I feel pretty comfortable coding in Django itself, and it's been maybe a year and a half, and I don't even get to code that much, given that there are a lot of other things going on. Like I don't like typically write that much code itself, but still I have found that I find myself a lot more comfortable with Python Django itself. I think, like I mentioned, the big things that stand out to me were how easy it was to pick up, how easy it is to get started, like how easy getting that admin panel and things like that are really useful for your stuff. You don't have to really build too much to get all those things in place. And of course, how it leverages Python itself and the advantages that Python brings to the table. That's kind of what I wanted to talk about. I can maybe talk a little bit about if there are any questions, I'd be happy to address any of those. Any thoughts, anything at all? I know there were a few questions on that I think would be a little tough to dive into. There's just too much to go into, so it might be tough. But if there's anything you guys want to ask, I'd be happy to address anything. Thank you, Pranav. Like, I'm sorry for the technical confusion. There was a lot of back and forth, like, and Nishant had an internet issue as well. So, yeah, sorry about that. Thank you, Pranav. Really appreciate that. Some standard practices and advice. Anubhav, that's a good question. I think standard practices like really vary. Like I feel like, and again, I may not be the best person to answer it because I've only been doing this for the last couple of years. I'm not really super familiar. I know what practices we use, but that may not necessarily be the right thing to share. I would suggest like looking that up. My advice, I don't know what you want advice on. Is there something specific you want advice on in Python development, or do you want just advice in life? Specific. If you want to be a little more specific, I can try to answer that. I'll take any other questions or anything that comes to mind. Nubhav, if you want to maybe be specific on what you mean by advice, code practices and file management in big projects. I think one thing, I mean, someone already asked me to a degree, like, how do we make code a little bit more modular? That's thing I would say, like, that's something that I think you can do with apps using Python Django. I would recommend making things more modular. The more modular, the better, I think, just so you have that clean code separation. And that's just my preference, though. I think some people do like to keep things close by, especially if you're just getting started off where you are. I think some things that I think really help in terms of good practices are couple of things that I think are good. I'll just share two tips that really get off the bat. One is I think use constants a lot. I think a lot of people don't use this. Try to write constants for a lot of different things. Like I think you'd be surprised the kind of things that we use constants for. If you're using a random string somewhere, like highly recommend avoiding it. It leads to a lot of typos. Like you spend many hours trying to debug that. So just keep your random strings that you're using in constant files. I think those really help saving time in terms of debugging, because then your text editor is able to leverage that, right? Your whatever Visual Studio or PyCharm or whatever you're using, that is able to leverage the fact that there's a variable defined somewhere. So one definitely big advice I would say is do that. Make sure you're using some constants to use, and also if you want to change them at a later point in time, you just have to change it in one place and it's changed everywhere. So whenever using any string literal or writing a URL or something, I would strongly recommend using constants. That's one thing I'd say is a very good practice to follow. The second practice that comes to mind, there are a ton of these, but second thing that comes to mind is early exiting your loops. So let's say, for example, I was trying to do, okay, I might need to share my screen. I can share my screen and quickly walk through this. And hopefully my screen is not visible about that. So let me do, okay, hopefully this is visible. So let's say I want to do let's say I want to look at for all users in all my users. Let's say I have a bunch of users. Let's say I already have defined users and I look at, oh my God, how do I make it code? Okay, yeah, for user in users. And let's say I want to do something with this user, right? I want to check if user's name doesn't start, if user's name starts with V, then do blah, 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 right? That's what I want to do. A lot of people write code saying if user.name of 0 equal to V, then do something, right? Then do whatever whole bunch of things happen, right? God, I don't know how to put comments here, sorry. Yeah, so basically you typically what I've seen a lot of people write code as is they usually do, if this condition is met, then do so many different things. And if this condition is not met, then like it basically you have a whole bunch of if conditions and you write your code in such a way. One thing I would recommend a lot to do is like if there's a set of users that you can just remove at the get-go that you don't intend on using, my recommendation would be to do something like this, right? Sorry, my code, I don't even my recommendation would be to do this instead. So basically exit out of the loop. I don't know why it's lagging, but my recommendation would be exit out of the loop if you're not using that, so that at least you save time in the fact that that is not being processed. Those users that you don't really care about or not needed for this piece of code is not being processed. So that's another thing that I would say is a good practice. Like use early exit loops. Like make sure you exit out of a loop when you're not using those users. So rather than writing if username equal to do something, I would say write if not continue, and then at least you remove those users. You don't spend time processing that. So I think that's something that I would say is useful as well. Oh, I didn't know I could change the language here. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Anyway, this is the fundamental principle. I think that applies to a lot of languages, not just Python Django as well. Is it running late, Shruti? I believe so. I think we are running late, but I'm also done right now. So I don't know if you're asking, am I still going to continue, or are you asking that Are we late? Yes, we are late. I'm so sorry. We had some trouble starting, but we are running late. But I am done now. I'm mostly done for the day. Yeah, definitely reach out. I think reach out to me if you have any questions or any thoughts. I think I'm sorry this was kind of chaotic. We had to do a little bit of a back and forth. And yeah, definitely tune in to DevScript's other sessions. And yeah, thank you so much. Take care. How do I exit here or leave?